Hello and welcome to another edition of Pulp Picks. My name is Patrick.
I'm Fritz.
And we're here to give you this week's comic book reading recommendations on New Comic Book Day. Asterisks, some of our comics, mostly Marvel, were delayed a day, so they're showing up today, Wednesday, around noon-ish.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a system issue and whatever. It happens on occasion.
If you're watching this from the future, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. They already arrived. Or we're all dead. I don't know. I just got done reading Hello Darkness, and there's this whole...
fair enough.
There are nukes being fired and whatever. So anyway, speaking of things being fired up, and I'm thinking specifically of when his arms turn into those rocket launcher things. What did you pick this week, Fritz?
Yeah, so my pick this week is I Lie Popeye, the new Popeye miniseries from Massive Comics. They're kind of a newer publisher as far as I can tell.
They've done some stuff.
They've been around for a couple years.
Yeah, they email us a lot and they send us some promotional postcards and stuff. But yeah, relatively new.
Yeah, but this is their new series featuring Popeye the Sailor Man. If you're not familiar, is this like 2 weeks in a row where I've picked like a revitalization of like an old character that maybe newer people aren't familiar with? Because Johnny Quest was last week, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Popeye predates Johnny Quest considerably.
Yeah.
So
Popeye, if you don't know who Popeye is, he's a sailor. He eats a spinach, makes him super strong, gets into all kinds of wacky shenanigans. That's kind of sums up a lot of him.
He's one of the early versions of a cartoon character who imbibes something and makes him super powerful.
Well, and it's interesting because, if memory serves, he started out as a comic strip character before becoming, and this actually draws a lot more from that, I feel like, than it does from the cartoon, because you've got the Sea Hag showing up. It'll be interesting to see what they do with that, because this ends with like a lot of like, oh, okay, they might not be like the big bad of this. Actually, there's some other stuff happening.
Yep.
Yeah, but
it kind of almost like a Power Rangers-ish kind of vibe behind there.
And that's something. So we'll say up front, like a good chunk of this issue is reprinted from the Free Comic Book Day issue they put out this year. So if you didn't get that, it's all going to be new for you. There's a bunch of fun stuff in here. The front half is basically them, like, each character telling stories of, like, hey, how did Popeye lose his eye? Because, like, he's always, like, got, like, clothes and whatnot. Like, what's the story behind that? And then find out that was just kind of, like, a setup for, like, the villains kind of do what they're trying to do here.
Yes.
But it gives you a bunch of fun little vignettes before that. And, like, which one's true? Are any of them true? It's really funny because, like, the whole time they're telling them, Popeye's all just like, well, can I, like, actually say what happened? But yeah, one of the things I really liked with this, and I think we talked about this a little beforehand, is they went into this a bit more in the Free Comic Book Day issue, but the creator for this new series really wants to lean into, like, kind of like bringing a more, like, anime, like, shonen action vibe to this, which is like
definitely
yeah, and like as soon as you say it, it's just like, oh, that actually like tracks onto Popeye really well, because like he, in a lot of ways, he is this kind of like stereotypical like shonen protagonist of like he just likes to get into tussles, like he's got like he's got a weird thing to do with food, which if you're familiar with any kind of like shonen character, like there's always some weird food thing going on there.
Yeah.
Bluto's great as like the kind of like rival character. I love in here where he's like, him and Popeye definitely like don't get along, but he's not like a like total like jerk. Like he gets involved in the fight mostly just to show that like he's stronger. Spoiler alert, in typical Blue fashion, he is not. But
he's strong. He's not stronger. Yeah, for sure.
And like
and you've got like the wimpy side character.
Oh yeah,
who's kind of around. You know,
Wimpy's there, and like he's obviously like again, food is like I love them leaning into that. Olive has her whole thing, and it's great. But no, obviously if you're coming to Popeye, you want good action, and boy howdy, like again leaning into like the shonen aspect of it. The action here is great. Like you were talking before about his arms being like rocket launcher. Spoiler alert, maybe something like that kind of happens. And there's also just like a fun way of like how like they beat the villain at the end of this issue, because it seems like, oh, how are we supposed to beat them? And the way they do it is like super creative and fun, that's what you kind of want to have a Popeye fight. You want him to be like, it's like, like obviously a lot of times it's just like punching someone, but there's like the weird stuff that happens from the punching, like stuff like turning into something else. It's like, no, this is like, if you're a fan of the old cartoons or the old comics, it's really fun. Honestly, even if you don't, and this just kind of like looks appealing to you, I'd say it's a great read regardless. Yeah,
I would say if you're a manga or anime fan, this is also a very good read, which there are tons of. So I think this has pretty broad-based appeal.
Yeah, no, I don't know. It's always cool when you can see like this stuff that like, as like they've got down here, like this is the 95th anniversary of Popeye.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so like the fact that something this old can like still be coming out with new stuff that works is like super cool.
Depression era cartoon strip based on an actual sailor in Michigan. Yeah, crazy.
But yeah, speaking of revitalizing old stuff.
Yes. So I went with Universal Monsters Frankenstein #1, and we've had
We've had Dracula. We've had Creature from the Black Lagoon. And now Frankenstein. I think The Mummy is the only one left. Universal did The Mummy too, right?
Yeah, and isn't The Invisible Man part of that?
Yes, also The Invisible Man. Yeah, so we've got 2 more to go.
Which, that's, side note, maybe my favorite of the original Universal Monsters movie. I mean, so good. If you haven't seen it, it holds up probably the best as far as modern storytelling. But this is kind of a new take on it. And as we were kind of going over the books, I was saying that Michael Walsh's art in here, because he's writing and drawing, is absolutely the style that I like. It's kind of that, I don't know, it's like easy minimalist. It's not that there's not a ton of detail or whatever, but they use negatives, or artists who use a lot of heavy negative space to be able to create depth and volume to everything around them. Really get me. The Chris Somneys, the Javier Rodriguez, those kinds of artists that can use shadow as effectively as they can line.
I feel bad that I can't remember the artist's name right now, but it reminds me of like 10 years ago or something. There was that like Archie meets Night of the Living Dead, like the guy who was doing art on that. Yeah, like it's very similar to that vein.
Yeah, and it works really well because of a lot of the Frankenstein settings are kind of it's dark and gloomy, and there's lightning cracking, and so you see this kind of high contrast face where you can kind of see the nose and the cheekbone and whatever, and everything else is kind of shadow, and it just works really well to give it a great effect. There's this spread where there are these chains coming down and Frankenstein's kind of laying in the angle and the way that the chains, like, not overly detailed. There's not a single like thin, sketchy line in anything. Everything's kind of this heavy. It's just got such a cool vibe. But they did an interesting little twist on it. And at the very beginning of it, there's a young boy telling a very sad story to basically a headstone in a graveyard. And that's when Frankenstein and Fritz, as it turns out, is the sidekick here.
How much of this was you enjoying it because you can sympathize with a madman who has a Fritz sidekick?
Yeah, it was right, exactly. I think every madman should have a Fritz. It was really good. I really enjoyed this. It is definitely a welcome addition to what has already been a really good take on all of this stuff.
The fact that each one of these series has just knocked it out of the park, like the batting average here, and when you see the people working on them, it shouldn't be too surprising. But even still, like it's wild.
I think that and we see it often, you can take somebody who's very talented and just put them on the wrong project, and it just doesn't work. And so far, I know that, so these are Skybound, so Robert Kirkman picked up the rights to these. Yeah. And I don't know, like, it kind of feels like Kirkman's just got the Midas touch at this point, right? Like,
it really does.
All the stuff that he's written has been well, not everything has been a smash hit, but it's all been well received.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff that he's written has been smash hits. But now he's kind of, expanding the Skybound lineup drastically with, the Transformers and G.I. Joe intellectual properties, the Universal Monsters intellectual properties. And I don't have a complaint about a single creative team that he's put on any of those books. They've all been fantastic.
The only thing I have bad to say about pretty much any of them is, like, a lot of them I wish were longer than they are.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and we've got some rotation coming in the Energon universe on creative teams, so it's going to be interesting to see if we can sustain it. But yeah, I mean, the cover on this one tells you everything that you need to know about the aesthetic of this book, and it nails it. It gets that original Frankenstein lore vibe kind of thing, while putting an interesting spin on it so that you're not just reading the exact same thing over again.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
Also love the coloring in here.
The coloring is great too.
The way they use colors for certain scenes to, like, really drive from, like, how, like, unnatural this stuff is.
Yes.
Is really good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, and I like the point of view that we, the reader, get by adding this new character in here that's kind of taking us along through the story. It was really interesting. So, all right, well, kind of in the same vein, and we just mentioned Javier Rodriguez, we've got our consensus pick as?
The new issue of Satana, Bring Down the House. I believe this is 3 for 3 now.
Yes.
Which, if you've been reading this, you shouldn't be surprised. Also, if you've been in the store, you've noticed that we don't have any copies because they've all been selling out.
Yeah, so, and this is one where it has, word of mouth has really driven subscriptions to this book. So when one came out, we didn't sell out originally. It took a few weeks. But as people were coming around to giving it a try, they've all added it to their order. So we've been increasing the orders.
Which you don't honestly get a whole lot with comics nowadays. Like,
it's almost always the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's... So, Zatanna so far has been avoiding magic.
Yeah.
And is just doing a magic show in essentially Vegas, right?
Yeah.
They flat out said that
I
it's
think
Vegas.
so.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like, what does one character say at one point? It's free. You get it free with tickets to the water park.
Yeah. And a coupon that costs $12.
Yeah.
Yeah. It. So, I mean, she's trying to forget her past, essentially, is what she's trying to do. And then all of these magicians show up and start accusing her of using magic inappropriately.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we left off. And then there was this rabbit lady character.
Yeah.
So we get to see what happens with the rabbits as they're introduced and referred to as, apparently they're not on great terms with the group of magicians that we met last year.
There's like this weird like Cold War between like the casters and the rabbits. Which, like, you say it out loud sounds like crazy, but you read it in here, it's just like it somehow it's one of those. One of the things I've always loved about comics, especially, is they can take these things that sound like absolutely insane, but once you actually like sit down and like read through it and just like look at everything, it's just like you totally buy into like this world, like how it can exist this way. Yeah,
and they're doing such a great job of keeping everything like veiled enough that we're not learning too much too fast to kind of take the mystery and the intrigue out of it. I'm still not entirely sure who the rabbit lady on the cover here is.
Yeah.
Like, is she actually a rabbit? Is she a spirit? Is she kind of an illusionist? Like, what's going on here? But there are definitely rabbits that are, intelligent.
Yeah.
Or Zatanna is seeing rabbits that she thinks are intelligent. Like, they're definitely up to something. The dude that was spying on her, I thought that was a really cool concept.
Oh yeah,
too. So it's just been a lot of fun. And then we also get to see another, because this is, being a Black Label book, this is not in mainline continuity, but we see another famous DC magician show up in this book as well. Yeah, it's just been, again, another great creative team.
Honestly, in a similar vein to what we were talking about with like a lot of Skybound. There we go. Is the only complaint so far I have is like I know this is only a mini series, and I just want to see more from them.
Yeah, Black Label's been really good. I really liked Rogues. I really liked Swamp Thing Green Hell. There's been a number of books that have just been really good on Black Label, which doesn't surprise because DC's kind of interesting side spin-off kind of spin-off's not right, but it's a different take on a character or a group of characters just often hit.
Like, man, if I could like of any comic where if I had a chance to own original art from, speaking of Black Label books, if I could own some of the original stuff that Phil Jimenez did for issue 1 of Wonder Woman Historia.
Oh yeah.
Like that entire series was gorgeous, but his stuff in particular was just like phenomenal. Like the people they have on these books, like when they hit, they really hit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a fun ride. Well, knowing that we were short some books this week, that kind of limited our scope, but it's a massive release week, and we'll get access to the Marvel stuff here in just a couple hours. What else did you enjoy this week?
Yeah, let's see. So other stuff that was good this week, we're at I almost had it up here, but the penultimate issue of Ram V's run on Detective Comics came out this week.
Yep.
That one was super good. Like it's just kind of crazy seeing like all these disparate elements of Gotham kind of like rally against the Ograms and be like, hey, you're not welcome here. Like, you can't, like, impose your kind of order on us. Like, that's just not going to work. Like, like, the fact that you could objectively call, like, characters like Mr. Freeze, Two-Face, and even, like, the Ten-Eyed Man, like, good guys in this issue, like, for what they're doing is just wild. I would definitely put an asterisk by good guys of, like, oh, that's still a lot of blood being spilled.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
But no, those were great. We talked about this before, but the new issue of Void Rivals was really good this week.
Good. And, one thing that we forgot to talk about was the preview for the cover of the next one. What?
Yeah.
I totally forgot to mention that. Yes, the plot thickens. We get head gems clicking. What's up with that? It's having some kind of effect on things.
Some glowing eyes that belong to something.
Yeah.
The weirdly poignant story of Skuxoid continues also.
I got to admit, when he showed up, I was like, well, that's an interesting one-off.
Yeah.
His background story has been, or his backup story, I guess I should say, has been really good.
The funniest thing, I think maybe we talked about this before, but just in terms of like how Seth Rogen keeps like adapting various like image or like indie books in general to other media. All I can think of reading this is just like, man, Seth Rogen would voice Skuxoid.
He's got it.
Like, he would absolutely do that.
That would be so good.
But, no, that was good. Something that I think there was Artford in both that and this. They've finally got showing off the new G.I. Joe ongoing that's coming this November, which is in the system now. So if you want to get signed up for that, we absolutely can get you signed up for that.
Yeah, it's been excellent. I also, I got the chance to read Hello Darkness. We've got a ton of Hello Darkness #1, and we've got a good amount of Hello Darkness &2 because of, again, distributor
shenanigans.
Issues. But it's interesting. So it's an anthology book, and Garth Ennis is writing kind of the larger story at the back of each of the first 2 issues. And it's about a conflict that is currently happening in the world that escalates, and this group of friends, and it's interesting, but there are some creators who are just doing like a single page. There are some that are telling other stories. There was it in the first issue? There's Something is Killing the Children, or was it in the second one?
That's interesting.
Yeah, so there's kind of just a little 4 or 5 page. It's a bunch of interesting stuff. It's not for the weak of heart.
I'm not
definitely
surprised.
I mean, some of them just go from kind of odd, gory, or odd, creepy kind of things. Some of them are extremely gory. It's very mature. There are definitely adult situations happening in there. But it's reminiscent of those books and those shows like Tales from the Crypt and stuff like that, where you're just kind of getting a bunch of little one-offs, and then there's a couple ongoing stories that are going in there too. So Yeah.
Do we want to mention, like, obviously they're not out yet, but like some of the Marvel stuff that we are looking forward to coming in today?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So we've got the new Moon Knight.
Yep, the new Moon Knight anthology, which I love the idea of like playing with like looking at like different Moon Knights from like different time periods, like it because it was super cool when they did that with Iron Fist way back in the day, like kind of exploring like, oh yeah, this is like a mantle passed down. Like let's check out some of the other like people who've had this at some points.
Yep. Yeah, it should be really good. We've got Amazing Spider-Man. That creative team is quickly wrapping up here. How many more issues do they have?
Not a lot.
Just a few.
Yeah. The one I'm super excited for is Avengers versus Aliens.
Yeah.
That one, they put out some preview art for that looks super good because I mean you've got it's the Secret Wars team of Hickman and Ribic doing it. So I did see
Ribic.
Yeah. So like I saw some like early stuff for it this morning. That it sounds like it almost feels weird saying this considering how good Ultimate Spider-Man is. It might be his best book he's put out this year.
Oh wow!
Which is it's saying a lot, but
they've done a really interesting Marvel since they've gotten a hold of that whole Aliens Predator Fox wing.
Yeah,
has done some really interesting fun stuff with it. Wolverine versus Predator was very well. Received here at the store.
Yeah, Black Panther versus Predator just came out last week. Had a lot of people really enjoying that.
Yep. We've the Predator series that they did was really good. Yeah. And then there's a ton of X books. We've got Ultimate X-Men, we've got X-Men, and we've got NYX.
And X-Force. So yeah,
and X-Force.
Yeah, it's a massive X week this week.
Yeah, it's going to be a big X week. So all kinds of good stuff. I'm very much liking, I don't know that I'll be able to, as Marvel does, they're putting out a ton of X books, and I don't think that I'll be able to keep up with all of them, but there are definitely more that have captured my attention than I was expecting. So, yeah, and I'm kind of surprised by which ones I'm liking versus others.
Yeah, like I'm really super looking forward to Exceptional X-Men next week. That's one of the ones I've been most excited about.
Uncanny was just, that was about as perfect of a start for that run as I could imagine. It was so good. So, well, yeah, we'll be receiving those Marvel books in a little bit today. The distributor sent them air, so
just going to airdrop it.
Yeah, there's a helicopter going to be coming by with a pallet full of comics. So just wait for that. But yeah, and then we'll be back again next week with more picks. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, comment, share the videos with your friends. Get into your local comic shop because comics are one of the rare industries where almost everywhere that you can get the periodical issues is a locally owned business at this point. And there's a big group of small business owners that are keeping this industry going by being that exchange between the customer and the creators. So, it doesn't have to be our shop. We certainly appreciate everybody that shops with us. But if you're watching this video from outside of our immediate area, which I know we get comments from people who are watching from outside our area, get in and support those local comic shops because, it's a vital part of the community to keep these small local businesses going. And we've got some newer employees and we get a lot of new customers. And this time of year, we get a lot of people from out of town. And, we genuinely care about the experience that the customers have. And that's not something that we say in order to improve shareholder dividends or whatever. Like, we genuinely care about people's experience and we're enthusiastic about all this stuff. So being able to have those real, genuine interactions with people is great. And I'm not trying to speak for every comic shop, but I assume that everybody who's running a small business is doing it because that's what they want to be doing. So anyway, that's my soapbox moment. I'll be back with another one next week. Fritz, thank you for all of your input. The two of us will be back next week, and we're going to have a big announcement pretty soon about something else locally based. So there's a local creator that we're dotting the I's and crossing the T's and maybe crossing our I's and getting an event with a local artist set up. So we'll have more details on that in the near future. Until then, we'll see you next week and enjoy the reading.
I could be down for some of that.